At the end of my last video about my theories for Lord Roz's Master, which you all should definitely check out if you haven't already, I left it up to you guys to let me know your best theories, and oh boy did you ever. Instantly my comments were flooded with theories and speculation, so in this video, I'm going to cover some of the most popular theories I've seen and give my opinion. But before we get started, we're just over 400 subscribers away from our goal of 10k, so if you enjoy my content or are new to the channel, smash that subscribe button. Anyway, on with the video. The first super popular theory I've seen is related to the Oni. Now, obviously, the Oni were the mortal enemies of the dragons, so if you have Source Dragons, some people were theorizing that Dragons Rising might introduce Source Oni or something like that, and honestly, that could be possible. It's just I personally don't think that's the case, and even if it was the case, I don't think they would make Lord Roz's Master a Source Oni or whatever that is, just because I feel like Dragons Rising hasn't really touched on the concept of Oni too much. Even in the beginning of Season 3, they didn't name drop Oni specifically, they just said dragons were in war with their mortal enemies. Though I guess they did explain Oni later on in the Dragonian Storm Village, but I just have a feeling that Dragons Rising doesn't want to touch on Oni too much and wants to focus more on the dragons. I mean, the name is Dragons Rising after all, so I'm a bit suspicious of that. I don't really think his master's gonna turn out to be an Oni, but if it turns out to be an Oni, like, that is a pretty solid theory, I'm not even gonna lie. Another super interesting candidate for Lord Roz's Master that I personally would have never thought of was Master Chen or Clouse. And I think this is super interesting because there is some evidence. I wouldn't say it's convincing, but there are some weird connections. For example, the Tournament of the Elements was inspired from the Tournament of the Sources, meaning that Chen might have known about source dragons and like potentially elemental powers across the different realms. Of course, like, this is just going out a bit on a limb, maybe he read about it somewhere, but I think that there is a decent chance that Chen knew something about the source dragons. Also, Chen was obsessed with taking control of the elemental powers, and the source dragons are the source of all elemental powers. So maybe he wants to do something with them. I'm not really sure about that. Also, there is the slight issue that they are technically dead. They're in the realm of the departed. I'm not sure if they managed to escape, since Moro in Dragons Rising Season 3 says that everyone there just kind of moved on into the next phase of existence. So I don't even know if they're alive, but if they managed to escape somehow when all the merged realms, like, they were formed, I think that could be interesting. I don't really think this is going to be possible just because Chen wasn't built up at all, and there's a good chance that he's dead, but I think that it is certainly a really interesting theory that does seem to have some connections. Staying on the topic of old Ninjago villains, another villain who I've seen people frequently theorizing is Lord Roz's Master is Garmadon, and I'm like 80% sure that this is not true, just because of Garmadon's character arc in Crystallized about him learning to, like, actually love and care, and I don't think the writers would go back on that. I feel like that would be a little bit disrespectful to his character to have him go through these arcs of becoming a better person and then just turn out to be a big villain who wants to undo the merge and potentially hurt a lot of people. I just don't really see that happening. Also, it feels like Lord Roz's Master has been kind of working with Lord Roz for a long time, since he was a kid, and that's like way before the merge. So I don't think it's physically possible for Garmadon to be Lord Roz's Master, and I think that it just doesn't make sense with his character either. Another villain who it wouldn't really make sense for to come back and be Lord Roz's Master is the Overlord, and I see a lot of people strongly opposed to the idea of the Overlord being Lord Roz's Master, and honestly, I'm one of them, because the Overlord is not really a super interesting villain. We've seen him multiple times, we've seen him defeated like 3 times. I don't want the big villain that Dragons Rising builds up to just to be another villain we've seen defeated in the past multiple times. I want Lord Roz's Master to be something new. And not to mention, the Overlord was defeated in Crystallized. He was defeated by Lloyd even before Crystallized, so I don't see how he would be working with Lord Roz this whole time to create this plan. and I just think it would frankly be very boring for him to come back and be Lord Roz's master. In my last video about Lord Roz's master, I suggested that it might be a source dragon, and honestly, it seems like a lot of you in the comments agreed. In fact, a lot of you were suggesting that it might be the source dragon of motion, just because of, I guess, how nice she was to the ninja. Maybe there's like an ulterior motive there, and if there is, I think that would be pretty interesting, because the source dragon of motion does seem to be a very helpful and guiding figure. So if she turns out to be Lord Roz's master, I think that could be a cool plot twist, but they would have to write that well, because pretty much so far, Motion has shown no signs of being a villain. But if she is, like, we don't really have any proof yet, so she could be. But I also don't really think she is. I think it's one of the other source dragons, probably Strength. On the topic of dragons, another dragon who could be Lord Roz's master is Egal. And I know this was a theory that even I had personally, ever since we saw the release of a list containing Lord Roz's characteristics. Now, this video isn't really based on that, but the last video I did was kind of based around that. But anyway, Egal fulfills all of the characteristics on the list, which means that he is technically a candidate for Lord Roz's master. Now, of course, this list could be entirely false, and that's why all the theories that I've presented so far don't really follow that list at all. But if that list is true, then Egal could be a likely candidate. Also, another piece of evidence is that after Egal died, somehow Lord Roz knew that, and he used it to taunt Rontu when they fought in the monastery. So, how did he find out? Of course, one explanation is that maybe Egal was an old enemy of Lord Roz's master, but another explanation is that maybe Egal is Lord Roz's master and he faked his own death or something. I don't really know, but that is potentially an interesting path to cover. Maybe it was because he felt so betrayed by the humans, but he did spend a good chunk of season 2 training the ninja, so I'm not really sure about that. But again, he could be Lord Roz's master. I think that would be a very interesting path to go down. A popular theory for Lord Roz's master ever since like Dragon's Rising season 1 came out was the Time Twins. Now, the Time Twins just disappeared in season 7, and after that we didn't really see anything about them except for, like, I believe one short for Ninjago Legacy, the 10th anniversary. So I think a lot of people are still curious what happened to them, because we still don't have a canonical explanation. As far as we know, they're still lost in time. So it's possible that this merge maybe shook up some stuff and suddenly now they're back, or maybe they use Lord Roz as their vessel to come back after being lost in time. I'm not sure how that would work exactly, but I mean, I think the writers could figure something out. Not to mention, in one of the first trailers for Dragon's Rising, there was, I believe, some writing that said control time, control everything. I'll try to get the exact image, but like that did hint to the Time Twins coming back. And in fact, in early pictures, some people thought that Rapton was Crux. So this has been a theory going on for a long, long time. As for, do I think that the Time Twins are Lord Roz's master? I feel like the Time Twins are probably the most plausible out of all of the ones that I've talked about so far, just because, well, there's really nothing disproving that they're Lord Roz's master. Like, they haven't been built up a certain way, so we don't have any expectations for their character, so they could just turn out to be Lord Roz's master. But again, I don't know if they're gonna really just bring back old characters for fan service. I have a feeling that Lord Roz's master is going to be a completely new character, but if they wanted to bring back an old character, I think the Time Twins would be an okay option. My final theory on this list for Lord Roz's master, coming to the end, is the first Spinjitzu master. I have seen a lot of people theorizing this just because Lord Roz's master has an insane amount of power. So that would probably make him similar, at least in terms of power level, to the first Spinjitzu master. Besides, the first Spinjitzu master, we briefly saw him in season 10. We didn't really ever see him again. So we don't know what he's doing, like, at all. The only piece of evidence that kind of makes me a little bit skeptical of this theory is the fact that Lord Roz just disses the first Spinjitzu master. he breaks the shrine to the first Spinjitzu master in Dragon's Rising Season 3 Part 1. So I have a feeling he doesn't have too much respect for the first Spinjitzu master, but again, maybe that could just be an act. Maybe the first Spinjitzu master is pretending to be someone else when he talks with Lord Ross. I find it unlikely, but just because of the power level of Lord Ross's master, I have a feeling that he has at least something to do with the first Spinjitzu master, and I don't think it's all too unreasonable to theorize that the first Spinjitzu master might even be Lord Ross's master. So anyway, that's gonna do it for the theories that I've seen pretty popularly showing up in my comment section and all over YouTube. But if you have any other theories, as always, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. If they're enough, I might even make a second part to this video covering even more theories. But in this video, like I said, I didn't really adhere to a list that we had gotten with Lord Ross's master's alleged characteristics. So if you want theories that are more in line with that list, check out my previous video linked on the end screen now, and I will see you in the next one.